If you're a boxing fan and never want to miss a fight, Boxing Showtimes is the app you need. This is a professional boxing schedule in your pocket that keeps you up to date on what's going on in the world of boxing. Download now.
Alright, with both guys' respective fights being announced for December the 23rd, and we hope, we really do, we hope that we see Wilder Joshua next year. Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua, they've, had a little bit of a back and forth to an extent, not really with themselves. They've both made comments and one's addressed the other. So, Deontay Wilder, I'll quote him here directly, this is from Boxing Scene. He says, and I quote, with regards to Anthony Joshua, "I worry about every fight he's in. We question Joshua about his identity. Eddie Hearn built Joshua. He wasn't born a champion, he was made a champion. They did an amazing job of promoting him and getting him to the top. I'd have been the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world many years ago if I'd had the opportunities he was given." Now, Anthony Joshua took exception with that, right? And he said, and I quote here, "Who the F is he?" Obviously, you know what he's trying to say there. I'm just not going to say it for obvious reasons. He's a boxer, not a psychologist. The boy has had 50 fights, and he fought Jason Gavern in his 30th fight. I probably fought him in my 12th fight. Joshua said that was the son who he said it to. So, Joshua and Wilder. So Joshua saying that basically Anthony Joshua, he was given a title, so to speak. He wasn't, born a champion, for whatever that's worth. So I was thinking, right, and I was actually even thinking of redoing a Wilder video on this from a couple of years ago, a WTF video, because I love looking at resumes and, something like that where he kind of, with Deontay Wilder saying, if I had the opportunities, right? Well, let's see. Well, let's go back in time a little bit, Deontay Wilder, and let's see. So, Deontay Wilder said that Anthony Joshua wasn't born a champion, right? Well, Deontay Wilder, and just to interject, Anthony Joshua said it was Wilder's 30-something fight. It was his 32nd fight. He fought Jason Gavern in August 2014. He fought Stavern in his next fight. I think Anthony Joshua fought Gavern in his 10th or 11th fight. I don't think it was the 12th one. I think it was on the undercard of Kell Brook versus Jojo Dan. I'll check that now in a wee sec. But Wilder won his world title off Bermane Stavern the 17th of January, Muhammad Ali's birthday, as well as Alexander Usyk's birthday, 2015. That was, at the time, Stavern 24-1, right, and one draw. He'd only had one loss, and I'll go on his box rec and tell you who it was. I remember the fight. It was Demetrius King in 2007. Horrible stoppage. It's on YouTube. If you've ever seen it, horrible stoppage. Should never have been a stoppage loss. But Stavern, right, was touted, well, not touted, but he was seen as, a good fighter. And that was going to be a tough task for Wilder. He went the distance. But Stavern, you look at his resume. He going into that Wilder fight, he'd back-to-back wins over Chris Arreola. Each win was a year apart. Willie Herring, Ray Austin, Kirsten Manswell, who I think ended up becoming a bit of he did become a journeyman. That was the first loss Kirsten Mansell took, actually, to be fair, against Bermane Stavern. But that was Stavern going into the Wilder fight. Since the Wilder fight, right, he's had one win over Derek Rossi. That was in 2015. Lost to Wilder, lost to Joyce, lost to Trevor Bryan, lost to Jonathan Goodry, who was not a particularly amazing fighter, although he's done very little since then, actually. And that's Bermane Stavern. Bermane Stavern lost that last fight January this year. He's still fighting at the age of 45 years old. And he hasn't won a fight in nearly a decade. That's the guy Wilder won his world title off, right? Now, he wants to say Joshua had an easy touch and he had opportunities. Yeah, Joshua fought Charles Martin in 2016 for his world title. Fair to say, easy enough touch. Charles Martin, not a particularly memorable or good heavyweight champion. But with hindsight, what has Stavern done? Stavern had one title defense. That was against Wilder. He lost it. He picked up a vacant title against Chris Arreola, a guy who we beat, who was never that good to begin with. That's who Wilder, who was mandatory to be fair, got his title crack against and beat him. Yeah, Charles Martin picked up a vacant belt against Vyacheslav Glasov, won it via an injury. But, I said what Stavern has done since then. What has Charles Martin done since then? Well, Charles Martin, he lost to Adam Kalinacki in a very competitive fight. He done not too bad in that fight. He took the O off Gregory Corbin, who's not a particularly good heavyweight, to be fair. Stopped Gerald Washington, right? Lost to Luis Ortiz in 6 rounds in January of 2022. Should really have won that fight, but he ended up getting caught and taken out. Beat Devin Vargas. He's a garbage heavyweight. Everyone nearly beats him. If you can't beat him, you're going nowhere. And then lost to Jared Anderson. But no one else has taken him out as quick or as clinically as Anthony Joshua, and he took rounds off Jared Anderson. So although Charles Martin is no great shakes himself, it's fair to say that he has had, in the long run, a better career than Stavern. I think that's fair to say. In terms of when Joshua fought Gavin, he actually fought him. Oh yeah, he fought him on the undercard of. Wasn't the undercard of Kell Brook versus Jojo Dan. It was on Anthony Nelson, Jamie Wilson. These are some of the old shows that Hearn used to put on. They weren't exactly stellar back in the day, weren't they? Not, Stephen Smith. Some of these guys, I don't even remember some of these guys. They weren't stellar, those old shows back in the day. I think we remember the big ones. We forget some of them really were not amazing. But let's compare their resume as heavyweight champion. We'll do that. We'll focus on the heavyweight fights, right? The heavyweight title fights. So Josh Wilder beats Stavern, Molina, Johan Duapas, Arthur Spilka, Chris Arreola, Gerald Washington, Bermain Stavern. That is over the course of nearly 3 years. So he rematched Stavern, who was his mandatory, who hadn't really earned that shot. He fought Gerald Washington, who was unbeaten at the time, fair enough, but his career has been, he got stopped by Charles Martin. Chris Arreola, who retired after that fight and has since come back a couple more times. But Arreola was no great shakes. Arthur Spilka, a guy who got stopped by Brian Jennings. And Brian Jennings, shout out to Brian Jennings, but he's not a big puncher, never was. And Spilka's lost. He got knocked out in 2 rounds by Chisora. I think 3 years later, that was on the undercard of Dylan White Rivas. Fought Johan Duapas, who he beat Manuel Char, I believe, on points. And that was really kind of his claim to fame. And Eric Molina, who, he nearly always gets stopped in the 3rd round. Wilder stopped him in 9. Then he fought Ortiz, which was, at the time, a decent win. But Ortiz has done very little since then. Draw with Tyson Fury, knocked out Brazil. Beat Luis Ortiz again in a rematch, and then obviously he had the 2 fights with Fury, lost them both. So that's Wilder's resume as heavyweight champion. It's it's just that. It's just kind of meh. Let's go back and look at Joshua's, right? Let's go and have a look. So he beats Charles Martin, fights Dominic Brazil, who was unbeaten at the time, fights Eric Molina. Alright, bit of a gimme fight. Stopped him in 3 rounds. He was meant to do it. Fights Vladimir Klitschko. A little over a year after winning his world title, fights Vladimir Klitschko with the WBA title on the line to unify the division. Deontay Wilder had never come close to unifying prior to that. He could have fought Klitschko. We could have fought Klitschko a couple of times, specifically in 2015. Didn't. And that was before Klitschko got his mandatory with Fury called, so there was an opportunity there because Wilder had no mandatories because he was the mandatory for Bermain Stavern. Alright, fights Carlos Takam. That was on short notice, but bear in mind, right, that the original opponent was meant to be Kubrat Pulev. Carlos Takam was lined up as a kind of reserve, okay? So Joshua, on fight week, when that happens, you could have a lot worse than Carlos Takam, to be fair, then unifies again with Joseph Parker, who was unbeaten at the time in the Principality Stadium, beats him, makes a mandatory defense against Alexander Povetkin and beats him. Then he loses to Andy Ruiz. But bear in mind, we need to talk about the context of what happened going into the fight, not necessarily to Joshua, but in terms of opponents. Originally, Sky were trying to do a Wembley Stadium show with Dylan White and Anthony Joshua fighting for the title in April. Didn't happen. Dylan White, wasn't happy with this, that and the other. So they decided, right, let's take it on the road. Let's go to America. So they brought Big Baby Miller in, right? And I was looking forward to that fight. Big time. I still desperately want to see that gloves are off. So bad. I really want to see that gloves are off between Joshua and Miller. But Miller ended up failing the test, as we know. Some of the opponents they talked about and they tried to reach out and get: Luis Ortiz, Adam Kalnacki, Michael Hunter's name was thrown into the hat. They eventually settled on Andy Ruiz. It backfired spectacularly, but nevertheless, he was, okay, we don't have an opponent. We have only short amount of time to get an opponent. We could go pretty poor. We could take a Manuel Char. We could take, a short notice job against, an Eric Molina type, but they didn't. They got Andy Ruiz, who was unbeaten at the time. No, sorry, he wasn't unbeaten. He'd only lost to Joseph Parker at the time, and he'd only fought a couple of weeks prior against Demetrenko. So there you go. Beats Andy Ruiz in the rematch, does his mandatory against Pulev, and obviously loses twice to Alexander Usyk. That is a way better resume, I don't care what anyone says, than Deontay Wilder. So when Wilder's saying, Joshua, he wasn't born a champion, Eddie Hearn did this, that's a better resume, and he took more risks than Wilder did. Wilder fought Tyson Fury when Tyson Fury was only 6 months back from being out of the ring for 2.5 years, ballooning up to 400 pounds, alcohol and drugs, right? He fought Sefer Safiri, looked a shell of himself in there against Sefer Safiri, looked really weak against Francesco Pianetta in Belfast. Wilder was ringside for that fight. He looked at that and thought, I am taking candy from a baby. That's had to be what Wilder was thinking, because he didn't look good in those 2 fights, Tyson Fury. He didn't. He really didn't. Even Fury's fanboys will probably tell you he didn't look good in those 2 fights. He didn't. Wilder goes and fights him. That's the first proper, real, genuine risk he's taken in his career. He drew. Him saying, I'd be undisputed if I had these opportunities. You could have fought Klitschko. Parker was there when you fought Gerald Washington. You even got in the picture together. Why didn't that fight happen? So Deontay Wilder, making claims like that, saying that Anthony Joshua, he wasn't born a champion, and if I had the opportunities, well, you could have had some of these opportunities. You could have, but you didn't. You just decided, and he could have fought Deontay Wilder. Ludabella's character is questionable, very questionable as a character, Ludabella. But when he was working with Deontay Wilder as the quote-unquote promoter, I know Al Heyman was the guy who was really doing things, but Ludabella was there. He tried to make that his own deal. And what happened to Ludabella for his troubles? Well, he got booted out of Team Wilder. For trying to make him a career-high payday, a good offer, and a chance to become undisputed, he gets shown the door. What did you do today, Lou? Well, I tried to get my fighter well paid and make him undisputed. Ho! We can't be having that now. There's the door, but I just did my job. Well, yeah, but right here, we don't want that. That's basically it. So that's my thoughts on this. In terms of Wilder, if he beats Parker, I think he'll usurp Ortiz as the best win on Wilder's resume. But I just had to talk about the 2 resumes there in total. I was thinking of redoing the WTF video I did on Wilder, because I done it a couple of years ago now, and things have changed since then. The camera quality is better, the mic is better, everything is a bit better. Also, at the time when I did that, the Fury trilogy hadn't happened, hadn't even been announced, and it was more the Wilder fans who were saying about the egg weights and the spike water and stuff. There wasn't Wilder. There's a lot more to talk about now with the WTF video. And, I could probably do a bit more in-depth on his resume, and I've got a little bit better at certain things. So maybe we'll do that in the future, who knows. But for now, let me know your thoughts on what Wilder said. Joshua going in on Wilder, saying that you fought Gavin in your 30-something fight, 32nd to be exact. It was exactly 21 fights the difference. Joshua, bear in mind, right, I'm just going to finish with this. Joshua was professional for just over 2 years before he won a world title. Wilder was professional for 6 years, 6 and a bit years. Big difference. That's what I'll say on that one. Let me know your thoughts. Smash the like button if you enjoyed the video. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. For now, I'll talk to you. Peace.